Hey everyone, I'm pleased to have Veronika Durgin with me today. She's a recognized data leader, data VP at a major retail organization. And welcome to the podcast, Veronika. So great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And as promised, I'm going to make fun of your golden microphone. I am thoroughly impressed.
They didn't have other colors in the shop, only golden. But I was thinking if they had other colors, I probably would have picked golden as well. So
Yeah,
thanks
no,
for that.
this is definitely making a statement, and I'm sure your listeners can, but viewers really appreciate it.
To put it bluntly, because we're in the season where data teams are getting challenged. Everyone is saying, okay, why do we need a data team? What's the most important thing in crafting great digital journeys, customer journeys, and understanding the customer?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is the big soapbox that I get on, and I'm getting really frustrated by the whole data teams are useless, and I think we recently canceled data teams. Who needs data teams? It's unfortunate. I just like, before I answer your question about, digital journeys and kind of like how to use data for personalization, my role, I've spent, I don't know, 25 years in data. Every day of my career, somebody was trying to tell me that my role is not needed. I was a DBA for the longest time, and everybody kept telling me, "Oh, like we don't need no SQL. Who needs a DBA?" It's just silly. Let's just like stop with that. It's depressing. It's frustrating, and it's just not true. Just because you work with great people, you work with good people. It's really up to the leadership to make sure that teams are aligned with the correct projects. And even then, sometimes you will still hear that you're a bottleneck and you're not needed and I can do everything myself. So let's cut it out. We all have jobs. We work very hard. We want to believe that we deliver value. Sometimes decisions are made and maybe the project is not the right thing, and other times it's not the case. I'm going to move that aside. As for kind of like digital journeys and using data specifically around personalization, and it just when again stress, data is not just for personalization. There's a lot of uses for data. But for personalization, I mean, we live in a world where like I get upset when, I get emails that still, dear user or dear insert name. It just because, like I want you to know me a little better because I'm spoiled and I want personal stuff. But this is nothing new. Back years ago, now we call it personalization, but I keep joking, back years ago, we called it upsell. We wanted to sell you more stuff that we think you would be interested in. So I remember maybe 10, 15 years ago, I worked for a .com, and we were selling stuff and we called it upselling. As you check out, we present more stuff to you. So because again, every company is in the business of kind of providing, products or services to customers. And the only way to sell more is to provide those products or services that you think a customer would be interested in. So like a very pragmatic view on that. And data, of course, everything, that is collected about customers, everything that a customer shares with you, zero-party data, first-party data, third-party data, just makes that whatever we present to a customer that much more special and better, and hopefully makes our customers interested in it.
Do you think, as my experience is mostly in banking and some industrial use cases, and not so much in retail? We're starting to get on with retail use cases for our customers. Actually, started doing a little bit of retail this year. But the question is, has this digital journeys user experience really improved over the past years? One thing I always joke about is that the recommendation I've been getting from my Amazon account is, and I'm a heavy user of Amazon, I haven't gotten any better for in the past 20 years. They just seem to offer me more, to buy more toothpaste and that kind of stuff, and not really. And I feel like with 20 years of data, they should better know better. And this is Amazon. So is this just a do you think that we've gotten as an industry much better, or is it really the same old?
No, I mean, like, again,
Like
I
you
can
mentioned
really,
with insert name, we have that experience even with.
I'll speak as a customer. Sure, I want a recommendation of things that I've gotten in the past, right? And they're like, oh, you need more of that. But I also want like wildcards. But like, would an algorithm know about me like at that personal level? And sometimes just like think Spotify, right? Like periodically they'll just throw some random, and sometimes I wish it was like somebody gave me something by mistake, because it's almost like we seem to be pushed more into what we kind of are. But I'm like, I don't know if it's age, you get to a point where like, but I want something new. I don't, I mean, will we figure it out with machine learning? Probably not. I don't know. I think that's where maybe humanity will help us, like putting a human, be like, can we put a spin on that? Maybe personalization needs not just data and machines, but also a human touch of like some sort of artistic thing, you know?
Very, very true. That's why, for example, like Kindle sales have been going down for a number of years. So the ebook didn't become a thing, right? And I mean, it is a thing, but it actually seems to be relatively declining in popularity rather than increasing, which is this human, like you want to have a physical book. And I'm guessing the same thing applies also to sometimes to your shopping experience, right?
Yeah, I was actually talking about books and reading experience. I had a dinner yesterday with a couple of lovely ladies, and it went like a full gamut of conversation. And at some point, one was sharing about, we're talking about astronomy out of all the things, and the other got excited about it, and she suggested that we read a book written by Einstein. I would have never in a million years even like thought about reading a physics book written by Einstein. And now I'm like, I must read it. There is no way an algorithm would have ever suggested that I read a book about physics. And I'm like so excited about it. I'm like, I want to learn.
Yeah, those must have been the usual Einstein talk dinner, but yeah, I fully agree with you.
Right.
It's the same feeling you get when you use ChatGPT for, like, I'm surprised, like it has gotten extremely easy to figure out who's posting on LinkedIn something that they got out of ChatGPT or it's an actual original thought. So the value of the original thought is, I think, increasing rather than decreasing through ChatGPT. Yeah, interesting. In terms of, I mean, you are a technology person. You are like you said, you've been a database administrator and have worked your way through all sorts of managerial and senior technical roles. What do you think are the main challenges from the technical platform side now that companies should be aware of when improving their data landscape?
I believe it or not, have very passionate conversation about build versus buy almost on daily basis. And I think what really changed is that no matter what you pick, it's a temporary solution, because the landscape changes so fast. Whether like, build, it makes sense right now, you might have to buy a year from now just because whatever outside advances so much faster than you can possibly do. And alternative is the same. You might have to buy temporarily just, like to solve a problem immediately, but then consider building because like in that specific case. So I think right now at this moment in time, I think that is probably the hardest thing. And it also means that whatever ecosystem from technology perspective you end up building, it has to be easily replaceable. So it's like, kind of like traditional Lego brick analogy, you have to be able to replace those bricks. And it cannot, replatforming is super hard and it's very expensive. So like you have to think through, like if you invest into something heavily, it has to be like true core fundamental thing, and everything on the periphery has to be like you have to be very nimble. So hard. As humans, we love stability. Like change is hard. Thinking all the time and working through these trade-offs is super hard. So that I'm like, it's like emotionally challenging to live in this world right now where things change so fast and you kind of have to be on your toes all the time.
I fully agree. There's nothing as permanent as a temporary solution. And on the one hand, but on the other hand, I think the pace of change. People. I remember for the past 20 years we've been saying how everything is accelerating, the pace change. But now it's gotten to a point where it changes a lot, right? I mean, look at AI initiatives. The way we've done AI 2 years ago is completely different to how we do it today. And so and that relates also to the platforms. I mean, I discuss with clients and all the time on should they go to the platform A or B or C, or should they be using something like Snowflake or Databricks? Should they go native? Like what's the advantage? And that's actually oftentimes not, like, based on what you're saying, this is not really the correct question to ask, right? Because it's not like you take this decision and you stick with it forever, but rather you should have the components built in such a way where, the compute engine, the storage, the BI platform, the AI frameworks and methodologies, like all those things, you should build it in a much more interoperable and flexible way, to not be dependent on when things change. It becomes significantly easier, and you're stuck with this technology
Exactly.
that you thought you wouldn't get fired for buying. So yeah, it's very, very difficult.
So I think if I were to, like, you have to focus on process and people, and then technology becomes kind of like easy, right? Like, I think that's like, you have to position your teams and your processes in a way that you can do that, and, like, certain level of abstractions where possible. So it's a lot of technical decisions to make, but it's really like your people and processes need to be positioned and kind of trained to think that way, and then conversation about technology become a lot easier. It's kind of like you have bigger,
Right.
like, components, and then everything else is just moving as companies change, tools change.
Yeah, an interesting thing is that I could give you the context from a European perspective. We're just not used to that. We're not used to having this cycle of this speed, and ability to revise decisions. It's an overused term, but to fail quickly, right? We're just not used to that, especially in the enterprise context where everyone, we know, for example, software projects fail, data projects fail all the time for various reasons, and your job is to not let them fail all that much and recognize failing very early on, to switch and adjust in order for you to have significantly more wins than fails. And it seems that this is not yet fully understood, and the speed with which these technology keep changing overwhelms a lot of IT managers and data leads. But you're saying have a cognizant defocusing of the technology and more into the people and process, which I find very fascinating and very true to the experience, to what I'm seeing in the field.
I think about it as like detours, right? Like, you have a destination and you're driving, on highway or speedway, and then you hit traffic, and then you have to take a detour. You're still going towards the same destination. It's just not necessarily a straight path. And it's just easy to think that way. You're still going in a destination, right? And you were talking about European culture. I mean, it's company culture for sure, but again, like, I think it's truly also human psychology. Change is hard. Change is hard. Like, we like stability, we like routine. I can tell you, my son just started school, and I'm like falling apart because now my routine's different. So it's part of it is like, we're as humans, just it's hard to deal with.
Yeah. So the technology piece is one part. What do you think changes in terms of process, where now, on top of everything, we're also building AI products? Like, what is different? Do you think in the process? Is there anything different? Is it just a classical IT data software project, or is there something else to building AI products, bringing everyone along, that makes it distinct from how we've done such data products in the past?
I mean, I think the whole idea of data as a product of delivering kind of like well-defined components that solve specific problem is a little bit different. I think in general, data teams are catching up with software engineering, right? Data ops is still not a thing for many. There's still a lot of kind of like old-fashioned traditional batch sort of mentality. So that's a hard thing to me. I mean, like, AI product, I don't feel it's any different. You're delivering some sort of capability, and there has to be product market fit. Somebody needs to want it, and somebody needs to want to use it. So it needs to solve a problem. So you can call it AI, you can call it data, you can call it software, it doesn't matter. So AI is just how, right? AI by itself is not a product, it's just how you solve a problem. I'm kind of like, I know we're like hyping on AI, and that's great and amazing. We have machine learning and we have Gen AI, and it's all incredible, but it's a capability. It's kind of like a predictive, or it's generating something for you, or it's analyzing images. It's a capability. I mean, like, BI sort of like, analytics of what happened, arguably, is also a product. So I don't think of AI being special in that sense. I think it's just, you want to build something that somebody, I actually love Malcolm Hawker's definition of a product. It's like, somebody needs to be willing to pay for it. So now think about it, and it doesn't have to be like money, but like whatever we're building, is there product market fit? Because if there isn't, AI or not, it doesn't matter.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And the difference is, if yes, 100% true, but the difference is you would have all sorts of trying to going for that AI gold, where there's a different approach between data engineers and data teams, software engineers, and how they try to build AI products, and on the other hand, business users that are just not trying to build anything, but are trying to plug standard components together to get an outcome that they know should be possible. And the art is bringing all three together to get the proper solution going.
But it's like philosophically, maybe not philosophically, this is the same. Let's like 5 years ago, 10 years before AI, it's the same issue with any type of software. If you work for a tech company, right, there's a team of software engineers that are trying to write software. And then there's a business team that's trying to buy something because they don't have the muscle to build. So they generally like it's easier for them to buy and plug it in. They might end up actually doing the same thing. And then there is another team, oh, by the way, who has the same problem to solve that doesn't talk to the other team. So they go off and buy another solution that does the same thing. So whether AI or not, I think this is like a more of a people process, like we're going to fall back to it. There's again a people process problem. I from what I've seen like throughout my career, and I realized that, you know, my experience is just a tiny sliver of the universe. So I'm not going to claim that it's everywhere. AI didn't change our behavior at all. It's an amazing capability. It's enabling us to do things that we couldn't do before. So, and it's awesome. But at the same time, the behaviors of how we go about it are still the same. So there's still a team that's trying to build it. There's still a team that's trying to buy, and there's another team that's trying to buy the same thing, but like from a different vendor. So again, we kind of have to figure out a process of how we can, again, decide what is a better solution for everyone all around. And again, evaluate 3 solutions. As always, have a matrix of important features. Nothing is perfect, and then decide what's more important.
Right. Do you think that one thing that I'm really looking at in the past few weeks is this concept of services as software? And because because we know that, just like you mentioned, yes, it's just a bolt-on, same as it ever was, creating software with AI that solves a particular task. But now it feels like, with what's coming next, with the next models and the ability to have this multi-step reasoning for solving a variety of tasks, much emulating an actual person rather than just a scripted program, the game will actually change for the first time, I think, since the internet, for companies, in terms of really actually impacting. That's my personal feeling about it. How do you view this? And I mean, apparently it does more apply to businesses that have a lot more human effort, doing back office tasks, mid office tasks, just processing. There's non-automated legacy type businesses, if you will. But it definitely feels like this is going to be a major change. What do you think?
So are you, just a little bit more context, I'm not sure if I got it. So are you talking about more like a business
Consider
process
this.
automation?
Yeah, but consider RPA, but with a multi-step reasoning model trained on data that just wasn't there before. It wasn't captured in the frontier models. It did not exist. It does not, it's not found in any of the top models right now, but is being captured right now for the next iteration, meaning for next year. So you'd have the ability to say, I'm automating a person that, for example, works in accounting, or a person that works, let's say a person works in accounting, right? That, just processes invoices, writes emails, checks the ERP system, checks the CRM system, communicates with clients and colleagues and whatnot. And their entire usage of that tooling is being captured right now and trained and baked into the models. So you would be able to have AI that is, and this is just an example of one task that people have been waiting to be automated for a long time. But you can consider higher value added tasks, a data ops person, just using, let's say, just a couple of tools, not to name vendors, but let's say using an ETL tool, using a scheduling tool, checking where pipelines broke, repairing them, writing emails, checking tickets. So it's actual work where you could say, well, it's not rocket surgery, it's recurring work. So there's definitely a pattern to it. This is not a person designing the next system. This is just a person doing data operations. And where you could actually see these copilots becoming in certain functions, autopilots, where you would still have to feed them with data and plug them into the IT landscape. But it's more like you're buying the service. You're not buying the software as a service, but the service as a software. I don't know if you've...
Okay, yeah. I haven't thought about it that way, but what you're describing is automation, like plain and simple. And then I'll tell you kind of like just a funny story. As a DBA, my goal in life was to automate stuff so I wouldn't have to do anything, right? Like repetitive, that's what you describe. And it's not like some of it is repetitive, some of it is just because of these new capabilities that, AI is enabling us to do. Absolutely. There is, I'm sure, a subset of repeatable tasks, and I don't want to pick on any discipline because it's across the board that are just automatable with the capabilities. It's like Gen AI. I mean, ML was around, Gen AI will bring, but there is another. So there are two other things I want to mention. Obviously, human in the loop. There's still a subset of things where we can't risk even the 0.01% hallucination. So those will still
Absolutely.
need a human interaction somewhere. So there's one thing. And the other thing is the cost of that. If the cost of your soft services or software is higher than the cost of human, it'll never come to fruition because every company is in the business of making money. So it's all this amazing, incredible tech. If the ticket price is too high, and it just won't happen. So this is kind of like what I'm curious to see where we go. I'm sure things are getting better and better and cheaper. I mean, I do remember flat screen TVs that were $25,000 and now they're like, what, $200? So hopefully we'll get there and it'll just shift things that humans do and things that are just automated.
It's a very interesting way to also look at it, yeah, because it's just the next level of automation where you would have the hire a human versus hire an AI for a particular role, and the AI has to be significantly cheaper.
But again, it's like, buy or build. It's fundamentally, to me, it's the same thing.
It's the same.
You still decide to buy or to do, right? Like, and again, and it comes down to the total cost of ownership. How much a human costs, how much a tool or service, whatever it is, automation costs. Like fundamental, like I don't want to make it so like it's not a big deal. The technology itself is incredible. We're in the tour, it's something that we could never do before, and it's just so exciting. But at the end of the day, to a company, like you have your own business, you will still be making decisions that are enabling you, first of all, to do things cost efficiently and to also deliver the best value to your customers faster, right? They're kind of like these two things that you'll still be thinking through trade-offs, and sometimes you'll decide to buy this service or automation, and other times you'll decide to hire a couple of humans.
Exactly. And when you have the humans, I think the data-driven culture and having a proper data-driven culture is really key. What do you think? What's in your opinion what are the main ingredients to data-driven culture, and how to create one as a data and technology leader?
I am actually not a fan of data-driven, this whole thing. I love data-informed. Data-driven assumes you just look at your data and you're like, data is perfectly correct, and you're like, this is the decision. And it probably talks about like human in the loop. Because data could be wrong, data could give you, like you can make assumptions about a context of data. Look, that's why like I actually love data-informed. And to me, it's a muscle, it's a culture. Again, coming back to culture. If the culture of your org, your team is to look at data, to think of your experience, to collaborate with others and then make decision, like you become data informed, then you don't just like, it's not just a gut feel, but it's also not just blindly trusting what you're looking at. Because like we can go on this long conversation about context. You can look at data, it's in a different context than what you're assuming, and then you'll make a wrong decision. It's not that data's wrong, it's just that you interpreted it not in the way that it was presented. So like that's why I'm like I actually love data informed a lot more than just data driven.
Interesting. Data, it applies also to larger to the society at large, because you'd have thought that given that's my Swiss coffee machine deciding to clean itself in the middle of the podcast.
I can't hear, sir. I think you're okay.
Okay. So yeah, what I was saying is that when you have so much information out there and you have all the facts and all the data, it's still the way you interpret it is so different. And what you're saying here is data driven is not enough. Data informed means interpreting in the proper way. And I think this is where us humans will have a sustainable advantage for.
I think that's where we can really succeed, and this is where we also can completely ruin everything great, because we're beautiful because we're imperfect. So
going to mention people, we mentioned data culture. What about processes? What is the decision? What is the correct way of allocating decision rights in a technology organization to make sure that the business gets the most value out of its data, that the data team is enabled to do great things, and that not at the expense of others, but benefiting everyone?
that's I actually don't have an answer for you because I'm still trying to work through it. So, and the interesting thing is I'm kind of like starting to just appreciate it. Like this is the baseline, the world we live in. In a lot, like in the smaller orgs, it's probably a little bit easier, right? Because there aren't many people, and everybody's just generally focused on kind of like one thing. In a large org, right? Depending like where your data team is, so there could be a team that's aligned, say a centralized data team, aligned 100% with the critical company priorities. Like they're busy, they're delivering. Then there is another team that has their priorities, like another business area. They have their own priorities. They're not company priorities, but they're priorities for that team. So when that business area comes to the data team asking for something, data team doesn't have time for them. And that's how, like, I'll call it shadow data teams are born. But the reality is like there's the highest priority company-wide, but then there's other things that also need to get done. So that just, again, how we work. There's no like, it's never binary. And the more people are in the org, the more of these things happen. Because again, everybody has a job to do. That job is important. The scope could be small, it could be large. It depends. So like I don't have like a very linear, like if the CEO says it, you work on that, because there are all kinds of different priorities that are happening, and every team is working on initiatives that they believe are valuable for the company. So it just, again, this is just the world we live in.
It's a messy, complex world, and that's why it's also very much tied to the company, whether a more central or a more decentral approach in terms of the data team is the right one. And also, everyone has priorities, but you can't have everything that's priority number one, right? So there's always priority 1, 2, 3, 27, 48, etc. And it's a balancing act, right? To figure out what are the things that absolutely should get done in terms of data, because especially if it's a good data team, it's overwhelmed by requests from all sides, and it's hard to do everything.
It's just like for like data team that's overwhelmed requests, that's great, but then there's like because it's like within your scope of influence, right? Like is like you're an IC, you're junior IC, senior IC, the scope of influence that you have, whatever you do, you feel it's very important, right? It's your job to make sure it's important because you do a good job, right? Like then you go up and they're like, sorry, you're like on page 99 of our priority list. So then what happens? This person wants to do their job well, so they go off and do it. And that's how like all these like bad things or unstable, whatever that may be, happens. I think for every person, the only thing I could recommend as an IC, as a manager, make sure you're aligned to the highest priority thing within your area so that you're okay. That's why I was like, data teams, are not working on priorities. Make sure you are like within your scope. Yes, sometimes somebody will say, no, to us, you're not a priority. So do the best you can, because there's no perfection. But I think for you as a human being, delivering, a service to the company, make sure you are aligned to the highest priority within kind of like your area.
Yeah, it's like the usual. You need to identify what's the one thing and need to do it. And that's the one thing that if you don't do it, you'll get fired, right? So you have to know what that one thing is.
And it's kind of sad, but that's what needs to be. It's not like think through is this a nice to have, or is it like I need to do it because it's going to deliver value to my team, to my department, etc. Work on that. Like you'll be okay. Nobody will tell you that your job is canceled. And
there's this general feeling of uncertainty among data practitioners, not only because of the current wave of the the state of the economy, but just because the way the field keeps changing. Had a discussion with the Power BI developer the other day, and she was just concerned whether she's doing Power BI every day and super happy doing complex reports, dashboards being used by the company, but she's wondering, okay, is this something I could do in 3 years, in 5 years? Because the way technology changing, because you have like this text to SQL and these copilots in the data warehouse and all of that, answering the questions from business, like should I just drop that even though it's in high demand just to do something else? Because I mean, and it struck me as, okay, that's very far down the line. I mean, that's like that's not a very sudden change that you'll experience, but it really bears the question of how much of that work that that the data teams do now is really going to change in 5 years. What do you think?
oh my gosh, like when I started as a SQL Server DBA, and the help, it was like even before like Ask Jeeves. I don't know if you remember that, before Google. We had a book,
I
like
remember.
like a documentation about SQL Server, so you could like look through it, and then if you couldn't figure out what's wrong with it, there was a phone number in the end that you had to call. Here we are now. The data space, and I'm sure every other tech space, is changing. If you're in data and you don't love learning, you're in the wrong field, period. So there's one thing. So it will always change. It always changed. I am actually thrilled. I love learning. I hate being bored. The other thing specifically around Power BI, focus less on the tool itself and fundamentals. Because good design, understanding data, interpreting, identifying bad things, this is what you need to know, right? Because I started with SQL Server. I specialize in performance tuning optimization. Guess what? It still works for Snowflake. Understanding how data is stored, what is a better way, how engine retrieves data, how to optimize, oh, and by the way, yeah, physical kind of like implementation of your design matters. That this is important thing that I know, that like it's platform agnostic. So fundamentals, understand how data is stored, how it's retrieved, why is this number like getting that industry kind of better understanding. Oh, this number, like again, like data informed. This is what you're learning right now. Ooh, like I work for this industry and this is the patterns and trends that are kind of common. Like you kind of becoming this ML model in your head that's like based on my experiences and the new things, this is what it should look like. So I would tell her not to worry. Like if she enjoys learning, she'll be okay. It's like maybe 10 years from now she won't be working on Power BI, but everything she is learning to do now is definitely going to be still useful.
100% agree with you. And two side notes. You mentioned the earlier days. I remember when you'd get from Microsoft this huge package and get CDs from Microsoft Developer Network, and actually plug in the CDs and you'd look at them as the end. And I was amazed. I was like 20 something years ago, 23 years ago. I was amazed how great it was. I was like, well, that's the ultimate thing. You get all your questions answered, and it comes in this nice, I don't know how many CDs there were, but there were a lot of them for various technologies. That's the memory from then.
So like we lived through this. We're living through this. So I'm kind of like I keep telling so the other thing so I think a lot of people like went into data because of money, compensation. It's a well-paid profession. If you're in it just for money, then maybe you should reconsider, because you have to like it, not love it, because you will have to learn every day. And every day somebody will be telling you that data teams are useless and you're canceled and you'll not have a job and CDOs fail and data projects fail. It gets stressful. But if you really like it and you love learning, you'll be fine.
Oh, 100%. The other thing that you alluded to regarding the fundamentals, that's why, well, at least in my team, the Joe Reese's book, Fundamentals Data Engineering, is mandatory reading for everyone. Highly recommend Joe's book to everyone in data. But in my team, it's absolutely mandatory for the team to read it, because we keep having a lot of engagements with customers where, from the customer side, oftentimes you'd have very technology driven requirements saying, oh, we just want to get onto a certain platform, to not name names. We just want to use the latest features. For what? Have you considered the overall architecture? Have you considered data modeling? Have you considered all of those things that are actually independent of that technology? So we shouldn't be jumping, the team shouldn't be jumping on first 3 days, optimizing your platform, where you're just starting from scratch, and actually the questions you should be solving are the fundamentals that you should really take your time to think through.
It's like, I love it, which made me think, like, the other thing I love is like second order thinking. I don't know if you've ever kind of like read about it. So what we oftentimes see, and kind of I think what you're describing, so maybe they have a problem, like immediate problem, and they want to solve it. And they're like, this is the solution. But what you're challenging them is like, but what is the next step? Can you reuse this solution for other things? And can you support it? Is it scalable? Because then you can come to a realization that this is not the right solution. Yes, it solves your problem, but you should actually solve your problem with a different solution, whatever that may be, because it'll unlock additional capabilities. And it's, again, like as you go, like this comes with, to some people comes naturally, to others it's experience. So back to the person you mentioned, experience, you're getting experience. It'll make you just a better architect, if you will. And it's like technology itself, again, it doesn't matter. It'll continue changing. You'll be able to do super cool things, I'm sure, like in 5 to 10 years that you can't even think of right now. But it's like how you think about it, it's the fundamentals, is how you think through problems, how you figure out trade-offs is what's valuable.
Excellent. What do you think, if you mentioned junior ICs, senior ICs, what would your advice be for ICs looking to become leaders in the data space? What is the things that they should?
I usually ask,
what should be their thought process look like?
I ask why. The first question I ask is, why do you want to be a leader? Is it because there's some sort of peer pressure? And because leading humans is a special experience. It is not the same as writing code, because code is logical, humans are emotional, right? So first of all, figure out if like why you actually want to lead, because you can lead projects and influence architectural decisions without needing to lead humans. That's kind of like the first thing I start with. And then otherwise, if you do want to become a leader, for me, experience, and kind of like I am technologist, I am hands-on, I love it. So I'm a slightly different leader in that sense. So I just eventually kind of like transition from like a very senior, like principal IC into leadership, but I think I'm still more of like an architect than like I'm very much in the trenches with everybody else. And it's not like I have to, it just I love it. So I would
Sounds
say
very familiar, very familiar.
right, like I think there's like a small subset of people that are like, yeah, I get it. And then there's others that are their path into leadership was more from kind of like, I would say, program project management, where they have a general idea and they're more strategic leaders. I am very pragmatic, practical. I know we'll get it done because I actually know we can do it sort of person, like just a different personality. I think if you do want to lead people and kind of like impact and influence and coach and help them grow, if you have an opportunity, absolutely try it. But I just like figure out why you want to be in a leadership, because leadership is not about telling others what to do. It's just about, encouraging and being in the trenches when necessary and dealing with hard situations and being firm. And then like it's a like a lot of emotional thing that you have to kind of like work through. It's not the same as just writing code and telling others what to do.
My opinion is, ideally, you love the thing that you're doing, you're technically capable, and even though you're not, writing code all the time or writing code at all, but you'd be in the details of it, like you said, in the trenches, solving the problems, you'd understand deeply the architecture and everything. And it goes against a little bit the usual advice, like the higher you go, the less you need to know the technology. I tend to disagree. You need to have the IQ and the EQ, right? For that. But then on the project management side, as you mentioned, usually people would go through and go on to lead through just being excellent at execution. Not really that strategic, but really first order delivery done right. And it's almost as if there's an inverse correlation for that particular aspect of a project manager job in data, where someone who's not knowledgeable in data in particular could actually be a better project manager than someone who's deeply knowledgeable, because they would often tend to intervene rather than project manage. They would probably try to not necessarily, obviously, but oftentimes, anecdotally, way too often, would try to essentially influence the work of others in a way that they shouldn't, because they're the project manager, not the architect, not the business analyst, not the senior developer, just because they happen to know the subject. And if they don't know the subject, their chance of succeeding with that data project is slightly higher. I don't know if there's research on that, but there'd certainly be a hypothesis.
I don't know. It's like, it seems like your experience. I just want to say that the size of the company, maturity of the company, culture, data team, every type of personality and leadership style fits in. It's not everyone for everyone, right? There is like a place for everyone, but don't think that every place is for you, is what I'm trying to say. What you're describing, I'm actually going to say, I've seen those people, but I'm going to say something a little bit more generic. Every time somebody comes to you, they don't come to you with a problem, they come to you with a solution. And it's like, to this day, I remember I used to love to read forums, like questions, answers. That's actually how I learned a ton. Like, you just read, like, and there was this kind of thing, like, you have to post your question in a way that helps me help you. So to your point, you have the experience where your PM was telling you the solution. I have experience where whoever from the business request, they actually tell us how to do it. And I'm like, okay, what are you actually trying to accomplish? Right? Like, two questions. What are you trying to accomplish? What problem are you trying to solve? And why is it important to solve it now? Let us give you the solution. And it's like, it's across the board. I think we're all internal problem solvers. So we have a solution in our head and we just like do it. And it's like, so it's not just PMs. Like, I think in general, it's very, very rare when people just state a problem first. They actually state a solution. And then you kind of have to have that conversation of like, okay, hold on. What are we actually doing here? Why are we doing it now? And then we'll give you a solution. And potentially we already have it. We don't have to build anything.
Yeah, it's always the balance, like, especially if you when as soon as you start leading leaders of other teams, then having the ability to kind of abstract yourself and being significantly less hands-on, significantly less intrusive, while still supporting and kind of steering the proper way is really is really the key. But as you mentioned, that oftentimes just takes experience, right?
Yeah.
There's people that are naturals at it, but the experience certainly matters. Sometimes you just recognize things out of experience, but
But I would just truly strongly encourage everyone, if they have an opportunity to step into management, to give it a try. Some are naive, thinking that they'll be awesome at it. They're not, but others is like the opposite. Some are actually natural leaders and they don't think they are. So I was like, understand why you want to do it, but if you have an opportunity, absolutely give it a try. But walk into it with eyes wide open and realize that if you're not good at it, you should move to the side. There's no shame in that, because if you suck at it, people around you are miserable. So it's kind of like, just know it's like your decision. And I know, like, I see this a lot, like, as humans, right? Like, we don't want to admit failure. And if you don't do a very good job managing, it's like, it's very hard to kind of like realize that and just be like, no, I'm just moving back to an IC role. Computers don't are a lot easier to deal with, though frustrating sometimes, but a lot easier.
Yeah, it's and ultimately it's your affinity to go with your hunch and stand behind a decision, the way that sometimes people that wish to be promoted as managers but aren't really decisive can't really, I mean, even if they have done a lot of qualities that are great, if they can't take a decision, they can't support the team, they can't move the project, they can't move the business forward. And it's not for everyone. Let's put it this way.
No. But some are like really awesome at it. Like that's why I'm like I don't want to discourage people. I want to absolutely encourage, and you can get better at it for sure with experience. But also realize that if it's not something you enjoy and if it's not something that people around you appreciate, then just it's okay. Like
I've seen the all sorts of extremes. I've seen very, very junior people when given the chance to lead, they would absolutely, I mean, they'll do a fantastic job. Like run it like you like with confidence and with complete competence that you wouldn't expect from them at this early age. They'd have others who would be like very smart, PhDs, amazing talents in their space, that would be completely overwhelmed by stepping into leadership. And oftentimes they're the ones that are smart enough then to also recognize that it's actually not for them, and have the ability to step back into a senior IC role and still save face and still be able to be great contributors, and not really, they just tried it, gave it a shot, didn't work out. But like you said, encourage them to try it is a very important takeaway, because you oftentimes you never know before you experience firsthand what it means.
I was like, I get this question, it's like, oh, looking back at your career, do you regret anything? No. Every experience, every decision that I made makes me a better person, right? Like I want to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. So whether it was the right decision, a good experience, or the wrong decision, a not good experience, it just shapes me into who I am. So that's why I'm like, take a chance, try it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're awesome at it, maybe you're not. Like it shapes your experience and who you are. And there's no shame in like anything. Like we're all so unique and special. And imagine how boring the world would be if we were all the same. That's why I'm like, I'm not looking forward to robots. They're all just the same.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to more robots. I think I see what you mean, but it just feels to me that the current, like my feeling with the current state of enterprise AI is very similar. It's like I know that, okay, it's amazing what we could do now with Gen AI, but the second iteration is going to be the one that's interesting. Much the same as if you remember the days of Hadoop, where you would see this ultra complex, I guess, ecosystem. And in order to do things that that in SQL, you could do them quite easily. And you don't have to write Java code, and you don't have to do map reduce jobs and all sorts of stuff. And you'd say, well, in the next iteration, this thing is going to be extracted away from me, so I can focus on actually solving the business problem. And that's when platforms like Snowflake and others came along that actually enabled you to do it. Then the popularity exploded, and then suddenly, data engineers, they used to be, saying like we make, excellent data engineers out of mediocre data engineers with Snowflake.
Yeah.
And the same now is going to be with AI, because, yes, you could do a very complex rack system with all the, bells and whistles, but even that is too complex for like achieving something that business says, hey, can you guys do it? Can you not do it? I don't want to, spend 500 person days on building that. That's just, not effective for me. And with the next iteration of the models, I think, and the ability to integrate them, you will hopefully achieve that, which still wouldn't be like
commoditized, right? Like things are going to be commoditized. They'll be easy, accessible, cheaper. Everybody can use it, and it just helps us be more efficient.
It'll play more power. It'll put more power in on the hands of business and data engineers that are working with business. Just bring the data into those models rather than having risky, complex, and for many companies, prohibitively expensive AI solutions that they know things are possible, but they're just out of reach because of complexity and cost.
And so hopefully we'll fix dear insert name emails too.
Oh yeah, that's the. I'm still, every week or so I'll get, someone from, LinkedIn writing me dear insert name, or someone offering you, something that if they checked your profile for even 3 seconds, they would know that you're not interested in. But yeah, I mean, that's the way things progress. Okay, so before we wrap this one up, thanks so much for this. I think it was a wonderful conversation and with lots of insights on leadership from your side. What is can you are you speaking at some events or having some? Is there some? How do people find you? And
Yeah. So I pretty much only use LinkedIn. Generally happy to connect. So if anybody wants to have a chat, love to engage. I mean, if you are a vendor and if you want to sell me something, the best way is just give me like a quick video demo so I can view it async. I don't have time to meet with everyone. I know you're all amazing, but there's only so much time in a day. But yes, LinkedIn. Speaking, I don't have anything immediately coming up, but things could change. So hopefully this is my hobby. So I do data for work and I also do data outside of work for hobby. So hopefully there's going to be some conferences that I'll be speaking at soon.
Thanks so much, Veronica. And thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.